Gentlemen, I would like you to join me in welcoming our own President of the Stars, Jim Danko.
That was perfect. Thank you and welcome to the Comedy Central roast of Jim Danko. So appreciate you all being here. But I do thank Margaret for her very warm remarks, and it's been certainly a delight to get to know her over the last year. Do you hear me all right with this mic? Everything's okay? Good. Well, it's great to see a standing room only crowd here, so appreciate everyone coming out. I'm trying to figure out if there's more or less here than a year ago and what that may or may not say, but it really is good to have you all back here. I hope that you have had a delightful summer and productive and had a little chance for some rest and relaxation. Bethany and I really, first and foremost want to thank you for such a wonderful first year. I cannot believe that it was a year ago I was standing up here petrified as I was about with 1 or 2 weeks experience to give a State of the University address, but a year has gone by and it really was a terrific year for us. We learned a lot. A lot of that outreach was obviously helpful in getting to know the university so well and getting to know you so well. The one thing that we know about presidents, and like to acknowledge my trustees that are here, we know that trustees hire and fire presidents, emphasis on hire. But I also know at the end of the day that this does not work unless there's a mutual trust and respect between myself and the faculty and the staff. And I really hope that continues. To me, it really, I've really been impressed with what I've seen. I'm impressed with the accomplishments of this university, and it continues to be, probably even more so, knowing what I do today, a great honor to be serving as the president of Butler University. So I thank you for that first year on behalf of my wife Bethany and I. So, early this week, I've been doing a lot of introductory remarks at different events, and I had a group of students that I was speaking with the other day. So I guess I'll open with them. I'll open with you the way I opened with them, because I'm kind of curious who had the most exciting summer adventure. And I'm going to take a pause now until somebody raises their hand. I've learned from the college vet people. Somebody in the back. All right. So far, the students are winning. Anybody else have an exciting? Everybody in the back had an exciting summer. Oh, all right. Good. All right, that's good. Anybody else? Most exciting thing, way in the back now. All right, a wife and I got a bulldog. One more. Anybody could top that? Okay, in the front here.
I don't know if I can top that, but GHS went to Cuba.
Okay, yes. We did have a contingent of folks in Cuba, and I heard it went terrific. So whatever you did, I hope that it turned out to provide you some relaxation and that you learned something out of it at the same time. We had a great summer. We started off the summer, a little vacation. I'm also going to make I'm going to make a few introductions in a minute here, but I'll also introduce my daughter Meredith, who's in the front row, and she said, "Dad, don't make me stand." So if you see the back of a head up here, that would be my daughter. But it was her 21st birthday, and we spent a few days celebrating in Las Vegas. So that was quite an experience. So that was an enjoyable time. We also had another chance. Bethany and I took a little bit of a break, and we worked our way up to visit some relatives of hers up in Vermont, which is quite a journey. I know a few of you have gone to Vermont. Let me just share a little bit about that, because it was a very interesting, it's interesting to do that. We first off, you can't get there from here. That one thing we've learned about Indianapolis, a great city that it is, that sometimes it's travel challenge, so to speak. So it took a little bit of a time. We had to get up early. We flew via Detroit, so a little stop in Detroit for an hour or two. Then we hopped on the plane, went up to Manchester. Has anybody done this kind of a journey before? So to get to Vermont, you go to Manchester is like, you go way north to Burlington or you go to Manchester. So we went into Manchester. And her parents, being very generous and kind and not wanting us to spend any extra money, said, well, we'll park a car for you at the Greyhound station up in Vermont. So just jump on the Greyhound bus from Manchester and work your way up to Vermont. And so we waited. The bus was about 20, 30 minutes late, but we got on. There was only a couple seats left, and they happened to be right behind the driver, which works out good for me because I like to watch the driver, and I'm ready to wake him up at a moment's notice if he starts to go off the course. And this guy happened to actually have the instructions or the driving directions to get from Manchester up there. So I was very attuned, and again, a lot of you have learned already, I like to drive the bus. So that was helpful that I was in that position. So we worked our way up there, and this, I think now this is about 6 or 7 hours later where we get to the bus station, which is outside of Vermont a little bit. And we still had another hour or so drive. So fortunately, the keys were under the mat like was planned and so forth, and we headed into the car. And I'm getting pretty anxious. I mean, it was a long day, and I really wanted to kind of settle in. So when we got, I don't know, maybe halfway there, Bethany's like, oh, we need to stop. And of course, I'm not big into stopping, but she needed to stop. And we came up to this, we were in Vermont at this point, a really beautiful bait and tackle store where Bethany needed to get a Mountain Dew or something. So I said, well, I'm just going to sit in the car. I'll keep the engine running. We got to keep moving along. Right, Bethany? And so... so she's in there, and it's like 10, 15 minutes, and I'm kind of looking at her, and she's in there laughing with some guy, and they're going crazy, and I'm getting very impatient. So she finally comes in the car, big smile on her face. I go, what the heck was that all about? I'm getting a little snarky at this point. And she says, oh, that was Steve Clark. We used to go out, I go, oh, that's nice. And I said, if things had gone a little differently, you and Steve Clark would be running the bait and tackle store up in Vermont. And without missing a beat, she turned to me and she says, if things had gone a little differently, Steve Clark would be the president of Butler University. First off, in the spirit of not ever plagiarizing, I want to thank Dan Rather for a portion of that story, but it represented our journey, so I appreciate that. Just a few things on what we're going to do today. Very similar to last year, what I wanted to do, we started, I think, a new tradition last year, which was to push the information out to you in written form. As everything, we're trying to give you the last minute, latest breaking news, so it got on your seats in time for today. So I apologize. Part of our thinking was to get this out in advance so you could read it. There's no, obviously, reason to read it right now, but you have that with you. I'm going to make sure that we continue to provide you information. I don't really look at I don't want to use this time to kind of throw a bunch of facts and figures on PowerPoint and bore you with that. You're able to read the information that's of interest to you, and we could talk about anything that might be important. I want to do a couple announcements here. Then I'm going to also comment on some of the items the one item I do want to focus on is the strategic document that I sent out earlier this week that you also have a copy of in front of you. Then at that point, a couple other comments on the world of higher ed and how we fit in. And I just want to open it up for questions at that point. But before I get into that, I do want to just make a couple announcements here if I can and acknowledge people that are here. Obviously, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody that has helped set up this event today. It's I know a lot of work goes into that, so thank you for all of that, and we appreciate that. I would like to have any of our new community members stand up. I think it's easier with faculty. If you're new faculty teaching this year full-time, let's make it if you're a new staff member that joined us since commencement. If you don't mind standing up so we could recognize you being here. Just to highlight a couple folks that are here with us too. Our new Dean of the College of Communication, Gary Edgerton, is with us. Gary, welcome. Thank you. Is Julie Miller here, our new Dean of Library? Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you. And of course, special guests, we have trustees with us. I'd like you folks to stand up and we could acknowledge you as well. Also, my congratulations. Josh Downing is now been appointed as the new chair of Staff Assembly. Josh here. All right. And I want to thank our past chair, Julie Schrader, for all her hard work. Also, I want to thank Mark Helmus. I said, Mark. Mark is going to be leaving us after a very successful run here at Butler. Thank you, Mark, for all that you've done. He's got a couple more weeks, so please be sure to stop by and thank him. He's going on to a great opportunity, so appreciate everything. All right, a few things that I would like to highlight, if I can, out of what I passed out, just to provide some updates on things that are happening. On the organizational front, we do have a couple key searches. Obviously, the Vice President of Advancement being one of them. We are still working on how that's going to play out and determining a search committee, so you'll hear more about that. The Provost search is in full swing, and Joe Kirsch is in the back somewhere. Joe is the chair of that, and appreciate the work that he and the committee have already been doing. They started talking about this early in the calendar year, January, February, and now the ads are out, and we're really trying to track this along. Since we were ready to kind of get right out of the chute at the beginning of the academic year. The ads have been placed, and we hope to have candidates on campus sometime in October, maybe early November or so. So our intention is to move fast on that particular search so that we could get on with this, given the length of time. I do want to acknowledge the work that Kate Morris has done in her time here. It's been terrific, and we've really enjoyed working for each other. And so thank you, Kate, for everything that you're doing for us. I had a chance, Kate had some comments early this week at the faculty development workshop, and I'm hopeful that a lot of the faculty got a chance to see that. She made some excellent points. One I just want to underscore that she made that was very, very important, and this really speaks to the type of provost that we're looking for and the importance of that position. The challenge, really, I think, to the faculty was that the faculty own the curriculum, they own the academic side of our university. They need to be engaged in what's going on here, and again, I appreciate the work that our provost, our deans are doing in terms of assuring that we're focused on the academic side of the house, and I appreciate the faculty engagement in there. The other major search we have going is Director of HR. Bill O'Donnell is heading that search, and I believe they're getting close to perhaps advertising for that position. So my encouragement, if you have any questions on any of those searches that are happening, to please talk with the head of the search committee, talk to people that are on the committee. They very much are looking for your input and your advice as we move ahead with those searches. On the admissions front, as you probably have already been hearing either through the grapevine or in the media, we do have our largest incoming class ever. Right now, it's sitting at about a little north of 1,100. History tells us that we're going to lose some between now and then. And Tom, the last time I talked to him, thought 1080, 1085, somewhere in that range is a possibility. The one thing that we have found, not only here at Butler, but elsewhere across the country with the universities, is a lot of what's happening in admissions and financial aid is very unpredictable right now. I guess it's been predicted to be unpredictable, and indeed it has been, given the economic forces that are occurring out there. So our intent was not to be at that number, that's for sure. However, I'm pleased that over the summer, the faculty and the staff and provost and LJ have really rallied the troops to make sure that we are well positioned to take care of that class coming in, and we have pretty much signed off on any additional resources needed to make sure that the quality of the experience of those students stays as high as it always has been in no matter what the size of the class. So been some interesting kind of ups and downs over the last 2 or 3 years where we're over a couple years ago. Last year we were down and we're back up again. So stay tuned for that, and I appreciate everybody's effort in welcoming in our students as they start arriving this weekend. We also had the largest number of applications ever at 9683. There was, again, some concern that we had a little bit of a bubble of applications a couple years after the Final Four runs, and that this year it might settle down a little bit. It did not settle down a little bit. It actually ticked up, which is great indication of the interest in Butler and the recognition that it's getting, not only for its athletics, but for its academic program. So we're very pleased to see that, pleased to see the interest. We have the largest out-of-state percentage in our history with 56%. So again, that speaks to the rising national recognition of our university. And I want to thank the admissions people. Obviously, with those kind of numbers, they had a lot of work to do this summer. So Tom, thank you and your group for managing us through that. I also want to mention, and this is related to some other comments I'll make as we continue along here. Given the economic factors out there too, and the unpredictability, we were concerned about not being able to hit our class, as a lot of universities were. To put it simply, we put more money on the street when it came to financial aid. And really, that was intended to assure that we had the type of class we wanted, the quality that we wanted, to push on some of the diversity elements, and just to assure that we had a high quality and diverse class come in. It was very interesting in that more people grabbed that financial aid than we expected, and that's both good and bad news, I guess. Financially, not necessarily, but I think from a positive standpoint, it shows that we are providing support to families that are in need of this right now, and that's what's happening in the marketplace. We have to be careful about where we're at with our tuition increase. This year, we are sitting on a financial aid budget of $52.4 million. Last year was $47.7 million. So it was a considerable uptick, enough, frankly, I think, again, Bruce could catch me on this. I'll throw facts out and he'll correct them. But it seems like that might offset our tuition increase that we had. So when we talk about the rising cost of tuition, the reality is by the time you factor in financial aid and things of that sort, the increase isn't going quite at the pace that some would lead us to believe. That's not to say that we don't have to worry about that. That's certainly an area of the rising cost of college and tuition that we do have to think about. On the national recognition side, I guess one big piece of news over the last few months that really helps us quite a bit is our move to the Atlantic 10. Probably first and foremost in people's mind, that is an athletic move in some respects, but it very much is a brand building. It's a reputation building. It's expanding recognition of Butler in so many ways. So it also fires on those cylinders as well when it comes to the recognition for our university. I'm very pleased that we were invited in. It was an honor to be in with the types of schools that are in there. A lot of them are very similar to us in their style and their size, and the fact that they respect academics first and foremost when it comes to their student athletes. So it really became somewhat of a no-brainer when that happened. And again, I want to thank Barry and his group for all the work they did, because that was done in a very compressed period of time in terms of making that decision. But we're very excited about that, and we also know that we're kind of doing this a year earlier. That was announced about a month after the first decision, which too is a very good thing to do, but it's causing a little bit of hurry up and get things done. But at the end of the day, this is kind of, a little bit, once the separation agreement was struck, it probably was best to move on. And so this is going to be a good move for us. I'm very pleased with that. On the financial front too, we do have some information in there. A lot of this information is still being finalized for this coming year, but I did want to share that with you as well. When it comes to finances, we could always do better. Probably the one thing that became quite clear to me in just about every meeting I had when I came to the university and spoke with people is that you do not have enough money to address all of the needs that we have. And there's no lack of programs and individuals and areas of the campus and facilities that it really is calling for investment. And there's no doubt that everybody, rightfully so, sees their program and their need is at the highest order. And so it's an interesting balancing act, trying to work through that when you know that you just don't have the deep pockets to take care of everything. My daughter and I actually, we did a little walk around last week. We grabbed all of the master keys, and one evening poked our heads into, I think, just about every building on campus, and I didn't look at any personal stuff, don't worry. But it really is interesting. I mean, obviously I've been here, but it does, every so often when nobody's around, it's not a bad idea to walk around campus and see how things look, right? And you go into some areas that look terrific, and then you go into some other buildings, and I won't cite any because well, then we might have to put them to the top of the list. But it's quickly evident to me that there's a lot of areas where you look at the carpets, or you look at the walls, or you look at the desks, you look at the classrooms, and the needs are clear, and we have to do everything we can to address those things. So I want you to know that that's recognized by myself, it's recognized by the vice presidents, by the deans, the people that are kind of charged, hold the keys right now to this university, recognize that, and it's an issue that we have to confront, right? I look at my job in so many ways is revolving around trying to find those resources that we need, whether it's raising money or adding programs or whatever, to address some of that. So I really do appreciate your patience in a lot of those areas, and it's quite telling when you see some of the things that need attention. And on that point, in terms of facilities, there are a few things that are highlighted in the document in terms of the facilities work that's going. Obviously, the Schrott Center, a lot of progress has happened over the last few months. That is on schedule in terms of completion. We also, as is true in every construction project, as we got into that, and Ron pointed out things that a more contemporary facility would need. So that I think probably got cut out of the budget, early on in terms of trying to have the money to do it. We decided we need to really add back in because it was short-sighted to let those things slide. So as a result, there's a bit more going into the Schrott Center than we had planned. Speaking of putting more money out than you planned, you might notice the entry to Jordan Hall, where they found a few cracks in different bricks in that, and of course once they kind of go in and they start pulling things out, they find more cracks. So, surprise, surprise. And we certainly didn't want anybody getting hit on the head as they walked in there, and that also is going to call for a bit more investment, and probably something that affects more of you than anything is the fact that entry is going to be closed for a good portion of the fall. But we need to address that, and it's also making us take a close look at other areas around Jordan and elsewhere on campus to make sure that things are safe. You might have noticed what's going on in Atherton. Again, some more improvements have occurred there over the summer. So I really do hope that that's a place that all of you use on a regular basis, and that's a highly visible space. And when prospective students visit a campus and they're looking around, they look at things like that. So I'm glad that we've been able to upgrade and expand that space as well. Certainly in the first year of being here, a high priority that's clear to me is our academic space. I am out there kind of, I guess, somewhat quietly, maybe not always so quietly, getting in front of donors to talk about the important need to get a science facility, for example, to deal with some of the space constraints that we have right now. That was identified as a high priority. That continues to be a high priority, and now we're kind of pushing a bit more aggressively on getting the resources for that. The other big problem you might notice is the parking problem. That's been talked about a lot. And we have, we're trying to push on that in a couple ways. One of the most important efforts going on right now, and that is to talk to some developers and to look at if there's ways to fund that so we could get that in a fast track. We actually received some outstanding proposals of kind of a mixed-use facility, parking at the top, and a ground level facility that might have housing, might have some mixed-use retail, and so that's still playing out. We are at a point now where we have enough information. We're going to have some serious conversations with the trustees to see if that makes sense for us. So you'll be hearing a bit more about that. I noticed in the document too, there's some information in there about some public grants that we're looking at to beautify the areas around the campus, some of the streets and so forth. And so under the leadership of Ben Hunter, we've been pursuing those quite aggressively as well. So there's a lot of good reasons to be optimistic when you look at the information that's in there. A lot of good progress is being made. Obviously, we have our challenges, and that continues to be something that we have to address as we move forward. I want to turn my attention a bit to the strategic vision document that you might have in front of you and that I sent out early this week. Again, I just want to point out a couple things in terms of what this is. Because even once you send something out like this, it gets a lot of commentary and some questions. First and foremost, I want to underscore this is some of the foundation pieces of what would be the vision for this university. One question I had was, where's the vision in this? Well, we're working, that's the idea of this. We need to do some planning. We need to sort through some things so we could really understand how this comes together. And we have to intersect that with a lot of discussion and consideration of what's happening in the world of higher education today. So what you have there, it was interesting coming into this job. There was a lot of discussion with the trustees about the size of Butler, for example, and how Butler might leverage their national success that was happening through the basketball program and a number of other things. I mean, rightfully so, the trustees and a lot of alums that were part of that group of trustees feel a strong passion for Butler. And the question really kind of comes up, it's like, why aren't we getting the same recognition as other great national institutions? And do we have the opportunity for that, right? I know a group of trustees, for example, went down to Duke a few years ago to look at that program. And that's what we need to do. We need to keep looking at some of the great universities out there and say, where do we fit into that? But to get to that point, you've got to sort through some big questions, right? And what I heard from a number of you when I came in was, what are we going to do? Are we growing our way to greatness? Are we going to shrink our way to greatness? That's a big question, and that's one of the first questions laid out there. So what we did during the course of, especially early in this calendar year, we had a lot of discussions, trustees, vice presidents, deans, about those kind of questions. And by the time we got to the May trustee meeting, we had a very, very good retreat down in Florida in March, and had a couple facilitators in to really help us take off all of the constraints, set aside preconceived notions, and think about Butler. Where should it be? Where could it go? And that was a great session, leading to some general agreement on certain issues, which are pretty much the centerpiece of what you have there, right? One thing we decided, or at least we need to pressure test now, is we want to grow the undergrad program. So we're going to grow our way to greatness, not necessarily shrink our way to greatness. And yet we don't want to be so big that the intimate education that we have here is lost. And so the point of that was, let's grow. We probably could push another 20% growth. But this is not a top-down process. This is not the trustees and Jim saying, okay, we're going to do this. Now we have to kind of figure out how that makes sense. And so we've asked our deans especially to work with the faculty in every college and figure out how might this number really play out. It might turn out to be 4,700, 4,600. There'll be people pushing back saying, I remember the old days when there were only 2,800. So that will certainly enter the conversation. At some point we'll make a decision, but the important point is that people are able to be in the conversation. So that's thrown out there for your consideration. There's other elements in there in terms of program growth and asking the colleges to take on an experiment or two in terms of new programs. I would take full credit for this, and I think Bruce and Mark have been correcting me ever since, but in the late hours before the May trustee meeting, when I decided to throw a number out there for endowment growth, I put $750 million. Because I like stretch goals, and I figure that one is on me, in a lot of ways. But I really believe, if you look at the schools that we aspire to be like, that's a reasonable goal. Look at Marquette; their endowment is twice what our endowment is. Wake Forest, 4 times what we are. And when we talk about schools that we should be equal with, those are names that come up quite a bit. And some people feel we should be ahead of them. Right? So for us to achieve that, then certainly if I look out a dozen years from now, our endowment should be capable of being comparable with that. And even if we get to that point, it's not like they're sitting idly by. So those are some of the important issues that we really need to sort through. And so what I'm asking you to do is to work with us this year and I don't want this thing to drag on for 5 years, to really start to help us think through that. So we have a group in place now. Margaret alluded to the executive council. I think it was with the dogs, right? But some of these councils and groups that I inherited, we've reworked a little bit. The Executive Council is kind of an evolution of a former group that was the senior administrative group that got together a couple times a month. But we've reconstituted a bit, and one of the big elements of that is I've asked Margaret and Doug to be on that because I want a stronger faculty voice on that. And we are going to be the group meeting a couple times a month to kind of collect this information, to discuss it. And the deans are part of that group as well. So there's pretty broad representation in terms of the leadership of the university that's going to drive this process. So I really encourage you to look at that document. I encourage you to share your views on that. Myself and Kate and others are making a point to get out to college meetings. I know I was in front of the business school yesterday, and any of these meetings we'd like to be part of so we could discuss it with you if that's the nature of that particular meeting. We'll do some town hall meetings. We'll have things to get the staff engaged in that, students as well. So this is an important effort. On the process itself, I might point out, we did decide we don't have an appetite to do a whole nother round of in the grass, in the weeds, strategic planning. That's happened already. And a lot of what came out of that strategic plan, it identified a lot of issues across campus. And the problem with those kind of plans, I'll tell you from my own experience what happens is you go through these efforts and you identify the 8 or 9 initiatives, and then you come up with the whole laundry list of things you need to do to achieve that, and then you look around and you don't have money for it, and it gets set aside, and people get frustrated by that. I don't want to take people through that frustration right now. We have enough operational details in the Dare to Make a Difference approach to build upon. What we need to do is settle the big questions. Where does this university go to? My objective out of this whole thing, just so you know, for me being the person that's got to represent you out there in front of Golf Fest and every other event, I want to be in a position in a year from now to show people of slides, videos, whatever it takes to sell them the vision of what this university is going to become. Sometimes I use the expression, this gleaming university on a hill. But I do see a university that's going to be dynamic, exciting, with very strong colleges in their own right, competing with the best national universities. So that's the vision. We need to get there, but we also need to make sure that people are participating in the conversation and understand what we're trying to do. So that was a 6-month process to present to you a list of ideas, strategic points that we want to pressure test. And so we are pressure testing that, doing the feasibility of all that, understanding the numbers, understanding how many classrooms we need, understanding the dorm situation, and so that's out there for your consideration. So to the question of is there a big vision of it, I mean, if people are flipping through it saying, I'm looking for that picture of the university in 2025, it's emerging. I just ask you to help us paint it a little bit, right? So that's part of this process. So that's where we're at with the strategic process. The other question that comes up quite a bit is why are we doing this, right? And it's important to kind of address that. I trust all of you are doing the same thing that I'm doing, and you're picking up the newspapers and the magazines, and you're hearing all the discussion of the world of higher education today, right? You can't help but hear it. Here I am in my first year of the presidency. Presidency magazine, is college still worth it, right? Navigating a difficult road. You know, you've got things like that. The Wall Street Journal just last week, headline, college debt hits the well-off. You guys see this as much as I do. It's out there. It's everywhere. The question is it real, and how do we play into it? I would say a year ago, yes, I was nervous, and I think a lot of those points I brought up with the search committee, that the economic factors and the technological factors and the competitive forces and all of that were converging in such a way that indeed we were on a difficult course. And I'm sure I brought that to your attention a year ago when I stood up here. Going into the summer, I probably still felt like that, maybe a little more. 3 months later, and I feel really, really intense about this. The things that have been happening just in the last 3 months really have me taking pause. And I think it has to have us all taking pause a bit, right? one thing that happened over the summer, I put it in my last dialogues with this, was a situation at the University of Virginia. It was a very interesting situation. If you haven't followed it, go in the Chronicle archives and take a look at it. You had a board of trustees that wanted to move very, very aggressively, at least a handful of them did, and what they thought was a slower-paced administration in the person of the president. And as a result, a rather rash decision was made that the president needed to go away. I caution you on doing that. That's not a good thing. So big hullabaloo, bottom line, the president's back. If you would plan it that way, it couldn't be better, because this was the first time I saw an entire group in a university rally behind a president. So it was perfect for her. But the underlying story there was really about pace of change. You had people that had their ear to the ground in terms of all of this noise that's out there that said, my God, Michigan's going online with their program, Stanford is, MIT, Harvard, all the big universities compared to us, Virginia, and we're kind of moving along, and we're going to study it in a couple years, X. And so the feeling was, we got to make a change. Probably it wasn't handled well. It wasn't probably not handled. It wasn't handled well. But to me, the issue is pace of change. That was an important point. And what I heard the trustees say when they reappointed the president, or called her back, or whatever you call it, was that, after we really heard all going on, we think that the university is prepared now to make the change that we were talking about, so we feel pretty good about it. And indeed, everybody's ears have perked up there. That's a very interesting story from that standpoint. There's other things going on out there. We had a facilitator in here early this week to meet with a group of us that brought to our attention some things that are happening. If the company Coursera is not familiar to you, I encourage you to look up Coursera. Coursera has now convinced universities like Michigan and Virginia and Washington and others to take their course content and put them online. And they don't know why necessarily. This is one of these startup companies where you've got the bright Silicon Valley people backed by big dollars from investment banks and venture capitalists that are bringing this together. And what worries me more now than, say, when this happened in 99 or 85 or whenever else people say this happened, is that you've got these united forces in an economic environment where people are really questioning the value added of traditional education, right? That's a more scary environment than it's ever been before, right? And there's an uncertain future in terms of where these online courses are going to. There's a professor at Stanford, we're actually talking to him next week, that took his a course online, and where he formerly reached 20,000, he's now reached 160,000. And this kind of was his area of expertise, artificial intelligence, and he came up with a pretty solid scheme of assessing and even at the end giving people credit if they completed certain things. He's kind of, I think, left Stanford to start up his own company. So it's just, I only point to those as examples of things that are really turning our worlds upside down. Now, where we might have dismissed some of these companies before, the University of Phoenix's and some of the programs out there, now you got universities at the top, right? So you got Harvard and MIT and Stanford, and you got the companies at the bottom. Anybody know where we're at? We're in the middle. And so what you have to worry about on that is how we get squeezed and how we respond to that. So that's some of the noise that's happening out there that I really think we need to pay attention to. And the reason why is because the type of education we give here, and the flip side of this, why aren't we all kind of running for the exits? There's a lot to be worried about. No, there's a lot in here in terms of the value that universities like Butler bring to the table. There's a lot of, our students, I told them the other day, they could go to any number of universities to learn some of the disciplines that we teach, right? But what they're getting here is the full package. They're getting things that students of this age want. They want the socialization. They want the network. They want somebody to help them with their vocation, their career. They need all of that. That's an important part of an education. What makes me feel good is going up to just about any Butler student, and if I talk about online education or any of that, he says, no, we're not interested in that. We like the full breadth of what you offer here. And what we also like at Butler is the way that it's done. So we have this ability to do it in an engaged way, a very proactive way, a high-touch way, right? Head, hands, heart. We've got everything going in our education. So our challenge, though, is to make sure we don't get squeezed in the middle, to make sure that as we're moving forward, how do we adapt that foundation, the foundation piece is the education. That's going to be transmitted differently. Just how it has, information is happening different in all kinds of other industries. So we're at that same crossroads right now. So what I'm encouraging us to think about, and some of the innovation that I talk about in that document, is to think about new approaches to education. And that's important dialogue. And to underscore what Kate said the other day, it's not me to figure it out. It's up to the faculty to figure out, right? But I really encourage you to work proactively and aggressively on this because the forces of change are out there, and there's enough noise out there right now that, trust me, this model that we have right now has got to change in some way. So what we've got to figure out is how the Butler way fits into that. Let me make one final point, because obviously I've talked way too long up here. We need some fuel for change. We need some fuel for change. And the fuel for change is innovation, right? Now, you all heard about the Innovation Fund at my installation last year, inauguration. On the good news side of that, I'm pleased to say that the money continues to come in and there's a lot of excitement. On the bad news side of everything I was working on last year, that one kind of kept going to the bottom of the stack. And so I own that one. I apologize for that. But what I'm pleased to say is that, I don't know if the announcement went out today, but we're ready to rock and roll with that. What I really need was somebody to help with all the tactical stuff. I did meet with a couple groups of faculty early this year to talk about that. And of course, that raised all the process questions and political questions and everything. That's why it kind of ends up in the bottom of the stack. It's like, I don't have the answers to that. But we need to get through the answers to that. I've appointed Jason Range as the executive director of the Butler Innovation Fund. He has assured me, and Jason is the right person for this, trust me, as I've talked to him over the last month about this. He's done this in costs. He understands that. He's a lawyer by background, a CFO by background. He's got all of these dimensions to him that I know make him the right person. And he also knows that his job isn't to stand in the way of any ideas. His job is to facilitate the ideas. So he's going to be in charge of that process. The website will be up early September. First applications are going to be due in October. Decisions are going to be made quickly thereafter. So that is going to continue to move forward. More details to come from Jason on that. We also need some more fuel in the system as far as I'm concerned. The other thing that I've talked about quite a bit is what's going to happen in the colleges and in the university. In that document, if it wasn't clear, we're asking each college to do some experimentation. Come up with some new program ideas. Come up with new ways to deliver that, right? So I encourage you to do that. We'll continue to talk. Kate and I are already talking about ways that we're going to assure that those things get funded. And finally, another very interesting conversation. I was with a key donor who many of you know, actually, and I'm not going to put him out here on the internet. But we had the same conversation about 2-3 weeks ago, and I talked about some of the things that are happening on the competitive forces, and by the end we were pretty exercised about this thing, and he said, I want to help. He says, why don't I get together some people that could be your venture capitalist? I want to make an investment. So instead of it being an endowment, could we think about it in another way? I go, we could think of any ways, especially if you could bring some money to the table. What I threw out of the table to him is like, okay, what I'll do is I'll try to find a group of people, I don't know what it is, 8, 10, 12 people, especially faculty, that could come to the table in October with you and others, bring in somebody from Silicon Valley, and let's have a no-holds-barred conversation. Remove the constraints. What could Butler University look like? Forget the politics, forget what college you're representing, forget what you believe in the past. Where's the future going? How could we change it? So what's the unbounded view of Butler University? And I'm very pleased that he is very hot on that. Even since that meeting, we've had about 3 or 4 exchanges to the point he says, I don't think October's quick enough, But and I understand that anxiety that is out there. So I really kind of, as I was mapping this out on my head, it's like, okay, we need something at the local level. I look at the Butler Innovation Fund as very faculty-oriented. You might have an idea. You might need to do something with your course, whatever it might be. Might be a group of faculty get together around an idea. The Butler Innovation Fund is up and running, and the money is there to support that. The college level, this is the more programmatic. That you get into the conversations about degrees and how this might play out. So we want that to happen. We'll be working with the deans to fund those types of initiatives. And then the Butler Unbounded, this is going to be a bit open. But we need to have some experimentation going across the entire spectrum. That's the way that we're going to fuel the change that we need to be competitive into the future. I'll leave you on one final thought here. A lot of the first year is really about the what and the hows and so forth, as you get to meet people who, all of that stuff. The one thing that became so clear to me, working with this community, being on the road, it really is about the why, right? And when I had the opportunity to meet alums, that's where you really see the Butler education come into play. These people are out there changing the world in a very positive way, right? A whole array of different people that I've met in terms of that education making a difference in their lives. So we can't lose sight of that. So the changes we make are really about the why. How are we going to keep doing what we have been doing, and why are we in this business? So I thank you for your time today, and I got all of about 5 minutes for questions. I'm not sure how I did that. I apologize for that. But I thank you again for being here today. We could at least open this up, and if we need to reschedule another session where I don't talk so long, I'll be glad to do that for you. But again, thank you for being here and for such a great first year.